and welcome to the Cool Down Room. I'm Alise, and this week I'll be going over the new driver and teams for this year's grid. Last week I went over the new rules and upgrades for this season, so make sure you check that out before the new season starts so we all understand when the commentators start using fancy new words. That being said, let's get into it. The first thing that I would like to go over is Arvin Lindblad. He is the only rookie that we have this season, other than Fernando Alonso, but we're not talking about him today because I don't feel like having the bit go on for that long. He will be driving for the Racing Bulls this season, but before we talk about that, I wanted to give you all a little bit of background on him as a person. So, Arvin Lindblad was born in London, English, so he's British, he flies under the British flag. However, he is also Swedish, which is where he got his last name from his father, who is Swedish. He was born on August 8th, 2007, which makes him almost exactly a year younger than me, which is a terrifying sentence. I knew that Kimmy was younger than me, but that's by 6 days, right? Or no, I think 10 days, so it's fine, right? That's not that much. What do you mean there's a rookie on the grid who's actually younger than I am? Arvin started driving at 5 years old, which is, I would say, the average age for most drivers to start. Some are weird, like Sebastian Vettel, and start at 3 years old. Kimi Räikkönen started at 8 or 9, so he's kind of right there in the middle. His first victory that I can find was as a British cadet champion in 2018. For those of us unfamiliar with British karting or karting in general, the British Cadet Series is a category of karting in the United Kingdom for kids ages 7 to 13. The cars only go 60 miles per hour because the series is designed to help teach kids control and driving techniques before they move on to higher classes. It's the direct pathway, or one of the direct pathways to higher level racing, especially in the UK. Lando and George both began their careers in the British Cadet Series. It is very prestigious. Just 2 years later in 2020, so when Arvin was about 13, he won the WSK Supermaster Series in a rather prestigious kart racing competition organized by World Series Karting, which, is what WSK stands for. In 2021, he won the WSK Euro Series, which is also a rather prestigious karting racing competition, and it is something that Charles and Kimi have also won. Kimi Antonelli, not Kimi Räikkönen. This win led to him joining Red Bull's junior program. He was signed when he was still 13, but he turned 14 that year. About 2 years later, in 2023, Arvin started his first full single-seater season. He competed in the Formula 4 UAE Championship with High Tech Grand Prix. He finished 5th overall and secured his first F4 victory. He also competed in Europe and dominated in the Italian F4 Championship. For clarification purposes, the difference between the UAE Championship and the Italian Championship are mostly location and affiliation. So all of the UAE races are held in the United Arab Emirates, and all the Italian races are held in Italy. The UAE races are promoted by and affiliated with the Automobile and Touring Club of the United Arab Emirates, and the Italian races are promoted by and affiliated with the WSK and the Automobile Club d'Italia. That same year, Arvin finished 4th in the concurrent Euro 4 Championship, and he concluded his F4 career by winning the prestigious non-championship Macau F4 World Cup race. So there is this thing called the Euro F4 Championship. It was designed to provide more race opportunities to drivers. It happens right after all of the other F4 championships because they tend to happen earlier in the year. At least this year, it is the Euro F4 Championship is racing 3 times in the summer in July-ish, and in 2 different countries, France and Italy, once in France, twice in Italy. Of course, the racing pattern changes over the years. And then, like I said, Macau is a non-championship race. It's not really affiliated with a specific thing. It's just an extra race that he did. Arvin Lindblad only spent a year in F4 before moving to F3, which is a pattern with him. He was only in F3 for a year. He was only in F2 for a year, which is kind of insane. That is something that is incredibly, incredibly difficult to do. Not many people do that, as we can see, with a lot of people who I think probably should have gotten seats who are in F2 right now who didn't. F2 has 22 drivers, and for a really long time, F1 obviously had 20, so there were 2 less seats. Now, I think hopefully that won't be as much of an issue, but it's still very much a pattern where drivers will get into F2 and then not end up in F1 because there just aren't enough seats, and there's never going to be enough seats. And once you win in F2, you can't compete in F2 again, but or once you, win the championship in F2, you can't compete in F2 again, but you're also not ever guaranteed to get a seat on the grid, reserve or otherwise. So very competitive. But anyway, Arvin joined F3 with Prema Racing in 2024, and he immediately ran the sprint race in Bahrain. This made him the youngest ever F3 race winner, as he was 16 at the time. He finished his one and only F3 season fourth in the Drivers' Championship. He had 4 victories, including winning both the sprint and feature races at Silverstone. And then that year, he was named the Aramco Best Rookie because he was the highest scoring debut driver. He moved on to F2 in 2025, aka last year, and this time with Campos Racing. He won in the Jeddah sprint race, making him the youngest F2 champion ever, this time at 17 years old. He finished his season 7th with 2 victories and 4 podiums. He was also introduced to the Formula One crowd last year, as I'm sure at least some of us saw, when he was granted a special super license so that he could make his F1 practice debut at the British Grand Prix, driving for Red Bull Racing. So, as I said before, unlike last year with all its changes, this time we only have 1 rookie. I would argue that is a lot more pressure, and it's definitely a lot more attention. But given his record, I am sure Arvin Lindblad is up to the task. I, for one, am very excited to see what he does this year, and I am praying the curse of the Red Bull second seat does not befall Isaac, and therefore does not befall Arvin. Nobody wants that. Red Bull, please stick with the driver for more than 5 seconds. I am literally begging you. We have 1.5 new teams on the grid. I hesitate a lot to call Audi a new team because it's the same team, okay? It's just Sauber with a new name. The drivers are the same, right? Like, we'll still see Nico and Gabriel on the grid. I think a lot has changed within the team, but other than that, it's basically, for our intents and purposes and regarding what we see, it's just the same team with a different name because the drivers are the same. And, the car will have changes, but that's normal, right? It's the same team. How did this even happen? How did Sauber become Audi? How did Audi become Sauber? How did Sauber become Audi? How did any of this happen? So originally, Audi was only supposed to increase its stake, as in like its number of shares in Sauber, to 70%, meaning they would own 70% of the team because that was the maximum that they were allowed to have at the time when this deal and agreement was being made. But when, I'm going to butcher this pronunciation, when Gernot Dillner became I'm never saying that again, became the CEO of Audi, as in the car company, in September of 2023, that plan changed. For those of you who don't know, team principal and CEO are generally very, very different. CEO of a team, that's what it sounds like. It's chief executive officer. You have the CEO and the team principal of the team, which are sometimes both. And then you will also have the CEO of the company. So Audi has a CEO of Audi as a whole, which is a name I was not supposed to say again, but Gernot Dillner is the CEO of Audi as a whole, and then you will have a CEO of Audi F1 and then a team principal of Audi F1. The CEO of Audi is different from the CEO of Audi F1. But anyway, when Dillner became the CEO of Audi in September of 2023, that plan very much changed, and he was like, no, actually, we're going to own all of Sauber. We're going to buy it. And so now Audi has full ownership over the team. They will be developing their own power unit, which is not always the norm for new teams. Half a new team, so it kind of does make a lot more sense here. But Cadillac, for example, is starting with a Ferrari power unit until probably 2028, 2029, when they will be making their own with General Motors. Like I said, Audi will be making its own power unit, which makes sense for a team that is not necessarily new, but they also keep marketing themselves as a new team. So I keep calling them a new team. They're not really all that new. Most teams absolutely do not come in with their own power unit because when they do, there are questions about competability and about them not being ready to compete with the others on the grid, because making a power unit is incredibly hard to do. Making an engine is incredibly hard to do. It is an absolute feat of engineering. And so the FIA is always nervous that they're not really going to be competable and that they're not going to bring anything new or interesting to the races, which is not the case here, because I imagine Audi has had a lot of time to work on developing their own power unit. This has been in the works for quite a while. And like I said, it's not technically a new team. It's just a different team with the same name. We will see Gabriel and Nico as the drivers for Audi, which in my opinion is a very good thing. We don't have insight into all of the staff changes, but I'm sure there will be some. We do know that Mario Binotto, who has a long career in F1, if you've ever seen that picture of someone kind of yelling at Charles Leclerc with like a hand on his shoulder and his finger like pointed at Charles, that's him. Mario Binotto will be the Chief Operating and Chief Technical Officer at Audi. But he will be the Chief Operating and Chief Technical Officer at Audi. He started that role actually in August of 2024, about a year and a half ago, when it was still technically called Sauber, which just goes to show how long it takes to build up an F1 team and get everything ready. And that even happens when you're not building from the ground up. As I'm sure we all know, Cadillac is entering our grid for the 2026 season. The cars will be driven by Sergio Checo Perez and Valtteri Bottas. It is nice to see them both back, and it is nice to see an American team on the grid. A second one, Haas is an American team, don't you forget it. Now, all I ask is that they get American drivers one day. Seriously, I cannot keep rooting for Europeans. It's killing me. Give me Jack Martin on the grid and not as a reserve driver for Aston Martin, or give me death. Zhou Guanyu, whom we all know and love, will be Cadillac's reserve driver for the season. I am personally loving their lineup. I think that is a who's who of people who are kind of done dirty, and I also love that they have drivers with some experience. I think that's very good for them. Some experience, as if they're not. They have a lot of experience, and I think that's really good that their drivers have that, because, you know, if you're a new team, you better have some good fucking drivers who actually know what they're talking about and who aren't, like, fumbling a little bit and also getting their bearings, you know? Graham Loden will be the team's team principal. He actually used to be the CEO of Marusa F1 / Marusa version F1, and he is back with us and joining Cadillac. Before he was named their team principal, he was actually advising the team, which means he was doing exactly what it sounds like he's doing. He was doing, giving them advice. He is also actually the reason that Zhou Guanyu got his seat and was the first driver to have a full-time F1 seat. He vouched for him, and How did Cadillac even get in? We have not had an 11th team ever, right? How did this even happen? Well, no one wants to tell me. No one wants to say what the application process looks like, or at least I can't find it. I know it involves like a letter and a little like questionnaire of sorts that you fill out, and you answer all of these questions being like, this is why my team is good and will be able to compete and da-da-da-da-da. What I can tell you is that Cadillac has actually applied before. Sort of. So, in January of 2024, you might remember seeing a funny little Instagram post saying that Michael Andretti had been denied entry of an 11th F1 team due to competitiveness concerns. That was the Andretti Cadillac team, which would have come in from the start with a General Motors engine. However, they were told they had to wait until 2028 because the FIA didn't want another engine manufacturer being forced to deal with them for the first 2 or 3 years of Cadillac's existence. Plus, they wouldn't be admitted or couldn't really be admitted in 2025 anyway, because the FIA didn't want them dealing with building 2 entirely different cars between 2025 and 2026 when our new regulations went into effect. However, the rest of the team was ready to go. They said they could enter as soon as 2025 because they've already been testing. And yes, okay, before you start yapping, 6 of the existing teams had engine deals, but none of the teams that had those engine deals had gotten into the sport and then demanded an engine deal, especially not knowing that they would switch to making their own engine 3 years later. In F1, there is a rule or like a law, right, that states that if a team is not able to, build their own engine, another team must step up and make an engine deal with them. I believe in 2010, Red Bull was having some problems building their own engine, and so they created this rule basically as a way of saying, like, you have to help them, even if it's in your own self-interest not to. We don't want a team competing or not competing just for something stupid like this when one of the other teams can just partner with them for a little bit until they can actually like build their own engine, right? Plus, especially with Cadillac switching to a General Motors engine in 2028 or 29, there was the concern that there would be some like indirect way that General Motors would have access to the plans of whatever engine that they ended up going with, right? And little bit of internal espionage there, however accidentally, right? And so that was a really big concern. And Cadillac went and decided to make a deal with Ferrari, who will be supplying their engine until, I believe, 2028, as far as I can tell, which is when General Motors will step in with their own engine that hopefully the FIA will have deemed appropriate and correct and compatible. Cadillac has also lost Michael Andretti, as far as I can tell. Officially, he stepped back in order to reduce his workload and navigate the political pressure from the FIA, which would hopefully be lessened if he stepped down because he was the one to put in the first bid. Nevertheless, they persisted, and Cadillac will be joining us on the grid for the 2026 season. I really hope they do well because I need to see an American team do well. I would also love to see a permanent American driver. I promise I'll buy merch of whatever team gives me a permanent American driver. But before I go, I want to explain to you all how the next 2 episodes are going to work because they're going to be a little bit different from normal. So there's 6 total days of testing split up between 2 weeks. Last year, there were only 3 days in 1 week because there weren't new regulations and new rules that teams had to deal with. And because of all the changes, they're giving teams way, way more time to test their cars, right? So the first set of testing is from February 11th to February 13th, and the second is from February 18th to February 20th. In order to give us enough time to take our notes and to prep and to edit, the episodes for testing will be coming out on February 18th and 25th. After that, it is business as usual. That is all that I have for today. Make sure you come back here to Spotify or YouTube or both on February 18th for a recap of everything that happened during the first 3 testing sessions. Until then, make sure you follow us on Instagram at Ithaca Cool Down Room, subscribe to our YouTube, which is also at Ithaca Cool Down Room, and follow us right here on Spotify. Good luck to Arvin Lindblad, Audi, and Cadillac, and everyone else on the grid, and as always, have a beautiful week. Mwah.